Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Think Young's first Thinkathon webinar of the year. This is an absolutely amazing opportunity, and thank you very much for coming to see our webinar. So, as a part of our Thinkathon project, we've developed our series called Speaking Up for our Digital Future series. And our first episode today is Activist Generation, Changing the World One Purchase at a Time. You may ask yourself, who is this activist generation? Well, it is our Generation Z, which I am myself a part of. So Gen Z is those born from 1997 up to 2012. And the Gen Z generation are completely changing the consumer game. And I would argue very much for the better. So during COVID-19, the world has completely shifted, and so has the consumer world. But this is not just due to COVID-19. This is definitely due to the rise of Gen Z. What Gen Z are offering, they're offering more sustainable, they are more outgoing, and they are much more prioritized on purpose compared to previous generations before. And they want their businesses to offer just that. So the pandemic has affected their education and their careers and their working lives, but yet still they are not taking this as a disadvantage, and they are making the most of it and completely changing the fast-growing consumer markets. So understanding this generation is key for brands to ensure that their bottom lines are successful. So that's why we're here today to talk about this. So we're joined with some very, very special guests with us today. So we have with us Anne Sequence-Lecoumette, who is Policy Officer for the New Consumer Agenda at the European Commission. Karen Geisels, who is Director of the European Consumer Centre at Belgium. And we have Rasmus Andersen, who is member of the European Parliament. And last but not least, Felipe Barakat, who is co-founder of OVO. So lovely to all have you here today, and thank you very much for joining us. And to everyone watching, thank you for joining. And please do leave your questions on whatever platform you're watching on us at for our lovely experts. So please leave your comments your questions in the comments section, and then our lovely experts a bit later on in the webinar will answer them for you. So let's get going and get to the good part. So today, I want to pose the first question to our MEP, Rasmus. So Rasmus, Gen Z are bringing authenticity, and they're completely shaking up the marketplace. So they're not only doing that, but they're looking beyond of what the product actually offers, and they're looking at the company behind it. So I want to ask you, so why is this generation completely shifting the consumer game? And what kind of mindset they have compared to previous generations? Rasmus?
Well, first of all, thanks for the invitation. Thanks for organizing this event. I would say in a very short answer, because it's necessary. I mean, we are all experiencing different crises right now, and we can see the first impacts, for example, of the climate crisis as one aspect. But we can also see a big social polarization also already before the pandemic, but especially now, where we can see that, I mean, a virus from China can change the whole world, and because we are linked to each other, right? We are maybe living in different parts of the world, and there are many differences also between the different regions, but still at the end we are facing the same challenges. And this means that, first of all, we need to change the world, and we also need to do that in the way we are consuming. And this is why I think that also the topic you choose is very important and a good one to discuss. I think one of the most the big differences between Generation Z, I'm not part of it, so it's always a little bit weird to tell people part of the generation about the generation. But still, I think one of the differences maybe to older generations are that we are having a lot of more information right now. Through the internet, it's much easier to get information. We have a lot of more science. It's not like an expert discussion any longer, but it's really something we can discuss also in formats like the one we are having today. And this, of course, means that everybody has more knowledge than maybe people had 20, 30 or 40 years ago. And then of course also because of that we are at least living in countries, European countries within the European Union, Western European Union, which are maybe also in a much different situation when it comes to wealth than maybe other parts of the world, like in Africa or in South America. Of course, we are also facing some social divisions also in Europe. I will talk about that also in some of the other questions we are discussing today, but still we are a rich place compared to other parts of the world. And this means also that we are maybe having the possibility to discuss questions like that, because we are in a situation to do this also compared to other parts of the world where people maybe are struggling with a lot more different elements to survive. And I think that these two points are really important reasons for why I would say, yeah, sustainability plays a stronger role now than it maybe had done some years ago. And one more aspect is, of course, also already youth activism related to these questions already had changed a lot. I mean, we are sitting here in a panel with one MEP, myself, and the representative of the European Commission, and we are debating and we are working on the European Green Deal in many levels now. And some years ago, nobody would have expected that this would be the top priority for the European Union. And then we can still discuss details, and I'm sure we are doing this also later today. But still, this is also because of the activism of groups like Fridays for Future. They started already to change the world, and this also has a lot of positive impacts and means that young people can do a lot and can change society to the better.
Thank you. We're in a very privileged position here, and then I'm really glad that we can have this conversation today as well. So thank you very much, Rasmus. So I want to pose the next question to Anne. Anne, young people have an innate comfort with technology. I myself was brought up completely with technology, and I know nothing different apart from technology. So technology has had a massive impact on our lives as Gen Z. So frequent innovation has given to us great continuous change in the marketplace, and we're constantly looking for new ideas and new pieces of technology. So realistically, can brands actually keep up with this frequent desire and need for innovation among young people like myself?
Thank you, Fred. Well, just mentioning, as Rasmus said, I'm not part of the Gen Z generation, but I do have the privilege to host two members of this generation, my children, who are respectively 17 and 12. And yes, they are digital natives. It's just fantastic, amazing. This is just what they grew up with, well, as teenagers, I would say. And this is just an actual given. I don't think the companies have very much of a choice, I'm afraid. This generation is here, is extremely active, and they make their voice heard, as consumers should do. I mean, consumers are powerful. In the EU, each year the European Commission collects data on consumption patterns in the EU, the consumer survey. And private consumption actually accounts for more than half of the European Union GDP. So consumers are powerful, and young consumers are extremely powerful, because not only do they consume, but they research their products and they communicate about their buys, what they enjoy, what they do not enjoy. They challenge the origin of products. They challenge the footprint of the products they buy. And so companies don't really have a choice. And I think they're aware of that.
Oh, thank you very much. So I can't wait to see how Gen Z has an impact on that. So Karen, so Gen Z, as I already said, has made their mark on the consumer game and will continue to for many years to come. So understanding this generation will be a very difficult challenge for brands and companies all across the world. So what's at stake for brands in particular, which are looking at them as they emerge over the years?
Well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here. I'm not part of the generation either. And it's a great opportunity to talk to them because we don't have that opportunity so many times. So I would like to first start a bit with explaining what the European Consumer Centers Network is about and why you all should remember us. The consumer centers give information on consumer rights in Europe, and we also give legal advice and assistance when a consumer has a cross-border issue, a cross-border consumer problem. So for instance, if you have a problem with a web shop or an airline company or another kind of trader based in a different country, then you can turn to us and free of charge. That's why it's so important to note about our existence. Then getting to the question, well, I'm going to explain a bit an experience that I had. I once gave a class some years ago to secondary school students about counterfeiting. The aim was to explain what counterfeit was and why they should avoid buying it, also online. Counterfeit is bad for the environment, it doesn't respect ethics, it's linked to criminal organizations, and counterfeit harms intellectual property rights of brands who invest in their products. And then the reactions and the questions showed me that, in fact, this generation really asks questions about the brands itself. Like, they are not really convinced about the fact that the brands are actually doing it right. And why do they produce in the factory just next door to the counterfeiters? So based on that, I think I would advise to the brands to be a good example for the environment, for the workers, and also to be very transparent about these production processes.
No, thank you. I definitely agree with that. As a Gen Z myself, I think we definitely just look beyond it, and we always want a company that's sustainable and has the good purpose and wants to do best for the future. So thank you very much for that answer. Felipe, I want to talk about your company, OVO. So OVO offers a green alternative to logistics, which is absolutely amazing. And you're actually helping to remove carbon emissions. So you deliver products that target the ethical consumer. So what made you start OVO?
So actually, yeah, the start of OVO was to reconnect the producers and the consumers. So in Switzerland, we are lucky to have a very decentralized country. So we can find farmers around the corner. And the idea was to give them a tool to connect to the consumer. So people could directly order their veggie bag, their eggs, honey, their homemade bread directly to the one who produced it. And that's linked, I think, to the Gen Z problematic, because I think more and more people are aware that it's important to source the products, to eat locally, to reduce the carbon emission impacts, also to know where the products come from, to lower the food waste, because when you receive a veggie bag directly from the producer, then it's easier to tackle this issue. So yeah, that was let's say the first idea, was to reconnect producers and consumers with a logistic solution directly for the producer, and to be able to cut the intermediary man, which is the big retailer. Yeah.
Perfect. I was going to say, I wish we had something like over in the UK as well. That would be very convenient. So if you ever expand, please do come to the UK. I want to ask you a second question as well, Felipe. So how would you define the ethical consumer, and how does your product target especially young ethical consumers as well?
Well, I think ethical consumerism is to really take consciousness of what you consume. It comes from somewhere, and is to ask yourself, where does your food comes from? Where does your energy comes from? How do you move around? And why is it that way? Is it possible to change it? So I think the ethics start from asking questions. And then is to trying to see where are the problems and how to solve them. What was your second question?
Yeah, sorry, no. So how does your product in particular target young ethical consumers?
Well, actually, our service is, let's say, is to help the producer to be able to sell his products. So we are not directly focused on the consumer. We are just an intermediary, but we offer the tool for a farmer to be able to compete with Amazon. I mean, it's not, but let's say it's a little bit this idea, so that the young generation, which is used to technology, to have good service, to be delivered fast, so that they can have the same experience, but with local craftsmen and small players of the market.
I think it's great to see companies like OVO bringing fresh produce to the consumer. So thank you very much for developing OVO, and thank you very much for answering our questions. So a recent study from Uni Days actually found that 93% of Gen Z brands have from Gen Z, they actually have they want brands to oblige to stand for environment issues. So they want businesses to stand and make an impact for the environment as well. So many young people are favoring ethical consumerism compared to previous generations, which is absolutely amazing. But how are we going to encourage a smooth transition to a more ethically sustainable economy in particular? So sort of what actions and institutions can, like the EEC, Karen, ensure a successful transition? Over to you, Karen.
Well, I think that the European Commission already did a very nice job delivering the Green Deal, and in that sense also influencing other future pieces of legislation and programs like the consumer program, like the internal market program, which has of course an impact on ECCs, because ECC network, the role of ECC net for the future is written in those programs. So also as ECC net, we want to take a role, and we are looking into this at the moment to see how we can play this role ourselves as a network, as employees, as network. And then in a second phase, how to add this sustainable aspect into our information and legal advice to consumers. For instance, tackling how sustainable our consumer rights are. But we are no experts in this. And we have to be clear about that also. So we will need, in any case, a good collaboration with other partners who are experts, like the European Commission, like law professors, and like other organizations, because we have to face it, passenger rights and e-commerce, which are our main topics, they're not very sustainable at the moment.
No, I definitely agree. Collaboration, I think, is definitely the way forward. So thank you very much for that. Rasmus, you are a member of the Greens, they're all known as the EFA in the European Parliament. So your organization actually aims to protect the environment and create a more healthier future for our planet. So as a young person myself, I make it a priority to help the environment in every possible way that I can, if that means working with young people and sort of making a positive difference in the world for our future. So especially in regards to ethical consumerism, how do you think young people can take the lead in creating a more healthier future?
I would say there are a lot of possibilities to do so. And for me, it's key to mention that, of course, consumerism and personal behavior means a lot also for changing the world. And it's always good to look on the production of clothes you would like to buy, not to buy the cheapest clothes, but to look on the quality and so on. So this is really important, of course. On the other side, from a political perspective, and I mean, I'm elected member of the European Parliament, we need to fight for structural change, because we all know that a lot of people are not looking on all those criteria we think are important. So this means we really need to change the structures behind, so that it will be easier to have a sustainable, build sustainable consumerism, right? So this means for me that the most important point is to try to change politics, like Fridays for Future started related to the climate issue, but there are a lot of other elements. Get involved in NGOs or start a local organization by yourself if you haven't maybe a topic you would like to fight for and there are no organizations taking your issues up, then start an organization. It's easy to do so in these times, and this is really what I think is important. Try to influence political parties. get involved in politics, run for parliament, a local parliament, or even the European Parliament up to the next elections, or start a business like Philippe did and try to change the world in topics you are interested in by showing that there are other possibilities than the ones we are having and we are getting frustrated over. This is really important, I think, this is where I also see a lot of opportunities, especially for young people, but it's not just linked to young people. I mean, also if a 50-year-old guy, I don't know, would like to change things, and he maybe gets interested in topics he hasn't thought about before, then feel free to do so. I mean, we need everybody in this fight, and I think there are a lot of good elements. I agree with the speakers arguing in this direction. There are a lot of good elements and proposals, especially in the European Union right now, but still we need to look on the details, and we need to ensure that that this will go in the right direction, and that we not will get backlash in some of the proposals. So this is really a political fight where there are a lot of different interests at stake, and this is where we need a powerful European citizenship, and especially young people, because we know that, I mean, your generation is the one who will have to live with the decisions we are making for a long time. So this is really important to get involved now.
Thank you so much, especially with your first point. I think a lot of Gen Z do fall victim to buying cheap stuff online and stuff like that. So thank you very much. That is a great way of making change in the future. And you've inspired me to one day take a political career one day. So thank you very much for those inspiring words. And to all young people out there, please do try your best and join a political party or join whatever organization you can to make the world a better place. So thank you very much, Rasmus, for those lovely words. So moving on, the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic has deeply shocked global markets across the world, which you've undoubtedly seen, and the digital sectors have grew immensely from it and have profited very well from it. So during the pandemic, environmental responsibility in particular has become more important to many young people. And we're seeing an increase in individuals who are willing to spend their money more on environmentally sustainable goods, which is absolutely brilliant to see. And Anne, I want to ask you, once we begin to ease out of lockdown, will we continue to see this shift towards more sustainability? And what do you think we'll learn, especially from this pandemic?
Well, thank you. I just wanted to reinforce what you just said about consumers being more interested in buying sustainable products. I was mentioning this consumer survey. I'm very excited by it because we just got the numbers out a few weeks ago. And indeed, there's already a quarter of European consumers who consider environmental questions for most or all their consuming. So that's a quarter. So still 3/4 to go, of course, but that's still quite substantial. And more than 2/3 of European consumers said that they bought products that are better for the environment, even though these products were more expensive. So this is true generally, and you find that these numbers actually grow as you go down in age of the consumers. So yeah, that's just to reinforce what you were saying. Thank you. Your question was about, sorry?
Sorry, I'll just quickly repeat the end bit. So as we begin to ease out of the pandemic, what do you think in the shift towards sustainability, what can we learn from the pandemic? And do you see the shift towards more sustainable produce and products?
So the shift to more sustainable products is not really related to the pandemic, in the sense that indeed, I mean, the European Green Deal having that absolute priority at EU level is, as Rasmus was saying, is the one big piece of big good news. So this is already ongoing, you know, the work on the sustainable products, on repairability of products, and so on and so forth. What the COVID pandemic has done is probably accelerating some of these changes, in particular the use of digital for purchases, especially in terms of consumer goods. It's actually also reinforced the use of local shops, especially for food related items. So the tendencies are still appearing for the time being. We are definitely taking stock of them. I mean, the consumer survey is mainly for us to be aware of the trends, the patterns in consumption. And we are also very aware of the financial pressure on many Europeans, especially the younger generation. So we are trying to find a balance between sustainable products and affordable products. That's one of the big tensions we have to deal with. And well, that's just the way it is. We have to deal with it.
No, I definitely agree. And I really hope to see a future where we can have low cost products and they're more sustainable products as well. So thank you so much, Anne, for that. Rasmus, I actually want to come back to you. As you mentioned earlier about more unethical practices in businesses and less sustainable products, I actually want to ask you, as you may know, fast fashion is causing a huge environmental and social crisis. And we can see a huge Generation Z loved brands, I will not mention any names, but who maybe practice more unethical business, have more unethical business practices, such as low paid labor. And at some points you have actual cases of child labor as well, which is absolutely horrible. So, but yet their popularity is still very prevalent, especially among young people. And although we are very much more a sustainable generation and a much more activist generation, we do see a lot of us actually falling to this and buying more cheap goods just because of the price and not thinking about the ethical standards behind this. So why do you think so many young people are choosing to sort of ignore these unethical practices and business practices?
I mean, it's a bit like a paradox, right? On the one side, we are having a lot of young people engaged in sustainability. It's really a big topic. We have discussed this earlier in our debate. And on the other side, a lot of consumers are still buying clothes, for example, in stores like Primark or other stores. And I think one of the reasons is because of the way we are trained to consume. It always has to be faster and cheaper, and we can see that companies like Primark, or in Germany the online school company Zalando, or for example Amazon, are earning a lot of money, and they are really clever in influencing our consumer behavior. They are using all the possibilities they are having in influencing with advertising, with other issues, and this is of course a dominance and the power they have related to, I don't know, small NGOs, where they are in a much stronger position. And this is basically also one of the reasons why I'm saying it's also important to fight for structural change, so that we can ensure that, for example, the price is not deciding everything, that more sustainable products are not much more expensive than products produced with much less sustainability when it comes to social or also to ecological questions. And the other side is that we, of course, are also facing a social division, as I pointed out earlier. So this means a lot of people also don't have the money to buy, for example, clothes which are more sustainable. And maybe also many people still doesn't have the time. There are more and more. I fully agree with all of your arguments mentioned earlier, but still there are also a lot of people in our societies really fighting for having a good life, and for having enough money for to buy essential things for their lives and for their children. And of course, this also means that, yeah, companies like I don't know, Amazon or Primark are benefiting a lot and are earning more and more money. And this is really something we also need to address and to look on with structural measures, I guess.
No, I agree, because I think as a Gen Z myself, I often find myself buying fast fashion that's cheap just because of the convenience and simply because of the money. So I really look forward to a future where more sustainable products are more widely available and they're more cheaper as well. So thank you very much, Rasmus. Just to go back to the topic of online shopping. So Karen, online shopping is quite quick and easy. I can simply sit in front of my laptop today, and it'll take me 5 minutes to order some clothes and it will come right to my door in the space of 2 days. But it's often at the expense of the environment. So if I was to order something in, it's often the times that it's a very small product and I've got a huge cardboard box in return. So I've got a huge plastic packaging that I'll have to dispose of in the process. And there's a lot of waste coming just from e-commerce. And as the popularity continues to grow, especially with lockdown and the convenience of it all, how are we simply going to keep up with this? And how is this going to affect the environment as a whole? So how come at the same time, how can we ensure that companies who are producing e-commerce can really sustain, be successful and improve their bottom line while also being environmentally stable and environmentally impactful? So Karen, what is your opinion on this?
Thank you for the question. A really interesting one, a very broad one, because there will be so many answers, but I'll tackle it from our perspective as ECC, and I will focus on the consumer rights we have. So the first right we have in e-commerce is the right of withdrawal. 14 days, we can have a reflection on if we want a product or we don't want a product. But the legislation doesn't really foresee how in practice this should be done. And we can see that companies offer a free right of withdrawal as a commercial practice. And this means that consumers have the illusion that the shipments don't have a financial or ecological impact. So they buy maybe like 4 of the same t-shirts in different sizes and then send all the rest back. Or even they might use the clothes to a party and then send them back all smelly. On the other hand, there's also the sustainable impact of these returned packages, because companies claim that consumers misuse their right of withdrawal, so that the product is not suitable for reuse and needs to be destroyed. There are some interesting documentaries on this, for if you're interested. So to tackle this, we would call to the consumers and not to abuse their right of withdrawal. It's a fundamental right, because you cannot see and feel the good as in a shop. So it's fundamental, but don't misuse it and use it in a sustainable way. And of course, before hitting the buy now button, maybe also have a reflection on what you should buy. But also for traders, we would like to encourage to rethink this free return and be creative in encouraging proper use of the right so that the goods can be reused. For instance, there was an example of applying big labels on the clothes on the outside so that they cannot be worn without taking it away. And also commit then to a sustainable treatment of the returned packages and avoid the destruction of these goods. Another important right is the right to repair. In the guarantee law, the EU guarantee law, a consumer has the choice between exchange, repair, and reimbursement. And of course, mostly consumer wants to have a new product. But in some cases, and for some types of products, repairing could be privileged to replacement. But this is only possible if the products are produced for repair and if the spare parts are available for instance, independent repairers or for the consumers itself if they are handy. So then the repairs would be cheaper and more privileged. And then a third right, which is very important, is of course the right of delivery. So according to EU legislation, a consumer is entitled to receive the good within 30 days. But companies in practice, they offer an express delivery even within 24 hours. But without a choice to the consumer, it might be very beneficial for a consumer. Sometimes you need the products very fast, but the choice is never requested. It is offered anyhow, and it has a big impact. So we would like to recommend to companies to give also, to be creative and give environmental friendly alternatives at the choice of the consumer.
Thank you very much. I'll definitely be going through Netflix a bit later, looking for those documentaries as well. So no, I want to shift the topic to a bit more about the EU and what the EU are currently doing with the ethical consumerism. So actually, before that, I want to ask Felipe a question. So Felipe, as a young entrepreneur, you are a key member to making a more sustainable future. You are the future of the marketplace. So with the rise of ethical consumerism, alongside this absolute big boost of e-commerce during the pandemic, what path do you see ethical consumerism actually taking in the future?
What I would like to see, or what I see it coming, because I think it's a bit different, but what I would like to see maybe is that people also start to consume less. I think that's the first thing. So the best way to have ethical consumerism, I think, is start consuming less. Not different or not. It's just to see what you need and consume what you need. And I think more and more people are getting aware of that. And that's it's a good link to what Karen was saying with repairing and having the ability to, when you buy a clothing, you can go to the same shop and have it repaired if the zip is not working. Not that you have to throw it out and just buy another one. And yeah, it seems that this would lower, let's say, consumption and economic growth, but I think it would also create a lot of opportunity in other kind of jobs, as repairing or spare parts, or so I think I would like to see going in this direction. And then for the things that you have to consume, I think it's important that people can have a good visibility on the supply chain and how it's done. And I think for that, it needs to be done locally. And I think that one big challenge now with the world of technology is all the information that people can get. And it's hard to know what information is correct. If you have a good marketing, you can just look like a perfect company. And you don't, and people, they kind of feel that they are, I don't know how to say that in English, that they don't know what to believe, let's say. And that also is not a help for companies who try to do a good thing, and then people are not sure if it's right or not. So I think that's really a big challenge. And one of the solutions, I think, is to be able to have more local production, so people can just go directly, see with their own eyes, and meet the people and have social interaction. So that's a bit my insights.
Thank you. I think that's what's great about Gen Z as well, because we very much want to look beyond the product and not just sort of this facade that the marketing world is putting on us. So it's great to hear that. I want to ask you the other side of that question, actually. So do you think that the ethical consumerism will actually take this path from your suggestions, or do you think it will go a completely different way?
Actually, I'm just after the Gen Z. I'm not a Gen Z, I must say. But I have some cousins and some family that are in this generation. I'm afraid that there are a lot with the telephone and just scrolling down on the cats jumping out. So, I don't know. I'm interested to see how it's going to come. But yeah, I think technology has really big challenges and also a lot of opportunities. So let's see. I cannot tell.
I think it's best that we all keep optimistic and hope for the best for the future there. Rasmus, I want to come back to you. So with the rise of these ethical brands that are making a positive step towards a more sustainable future, would really be the best plan of action to ensure that all products, to ensure that instead all products are ethically to consume. So instead of thinking on the way of we are looking for these, let's look at these particular businesses that are more ethical. Should we just instead ensure that every product is ethical? Regulation is actually a huge gap in the conversation. I don't see it often talked about. And arguably, for advocating for policy initiatives is the best way forward in this sense. Rasmus, do you agree with this? And what is your opinion on this? And how can the EU in particular help push this forward?
Yes, I mean, there are a lot of proposals on our table in the European Parliament, in the Commission. I'm sure there are still more proposals you are planning to comment. Of course, we are discussing or debating them a lot right now. Some of them you already mentioned. So I don't want to repeat, like the question on the right to repair and elements like that, where we know that we need some strong regulation, and big tech companies are lobbying against right now. So this would really be some key fights to take, where at least the European Parliament, but also the European Commission, I think, have been very clear about the in which way we want to go. And now it's also up to the political negotiations with some of the member states, maybe more skeptical, maybe more supporting industrial positions from the different member states. I'm a German MEP, so I know a lot about how influencing the German industry, for example, is, but it's the same with other countries. And then there are some elements, I think, where we really need some strong regulation and some strong laws, like, for example, also related to the supply chain, where I think the Commission had come up with a very good proposal. I mean, as Greens in the European Parliament, we always see some loopholes and we always want to make it better. But still, from a general perspective, looking on the direction the proposal is going, we think it's really important to ensure that this will put into law and will not be weakened in the negotiations we will have with the member states. If you are more interested in hearing more about that, you can always contact me, and I can via email or Instagram or Twitter, and then I can answer your questions, or I will give you in contact to colleagues working on those issues. I'm not an expert in all of these elements, of course. And there are other things, like, for example, also the discussion about a higher carbon price. I mean, this is not what we have discussed here right now, but of course, if the EU is coming up with a higher carbon price related to emission trading systems, related to some other elements, then of course this also has an impact on the price of products. And of course, this means that the environmental impact of products related to CO2 emissions, at least, are getting a bigger importance, right? And this means, of course, that it would also help to change some of the elements we are discussing here right now. But as I said before, my last sentence, this is a tough political battle, and the proposals are going in a good direction, and we are happy that we are in a situation where, because of political pressure, this is a so important issue within the European Commission, but also in the other institutions. But on the other side, we can't be sure that everything will be good at the end. So this is really a fight also about details in the regulation, and there we really need also your support to get that passed, because we know that there are a lot of other people working in another direction, and they have a lot of influence. And for me, it's not like I will say the industry is always the bad part and we are always the good guys, but still there are some things where we need to look on the details, and there are still a lot of conflicts, and we should take that into account.
Thank you very much. I'm pretty sure we're all confident in the European Union for helping make positive change. So thank you very much, Rasmus. I want to pose a final question before we go to our audience, to Anne. To our audience, please continue sending in your questions. We very much appreciate it, and we're looking forward to answering them. But just before that, Anne, back in November 2020, the European Commission launched a new consumer agenda, which you were a part of, and you're currently working on at the moment. So we'd like to hear a bit more about that. Your mission is actually to empower the consumers to play a large role in the green and digital transition. What real estate can consumers actually have towards this? And what outcomes do you believe will arise from this, Anne?
Thank you, Ulfet. So indeed, the new consumer agenda is the kind of political strategic framework for consumer policy for the forthcoming years, for the current Commission up to 2024. And it's structured around 5 priorities. And the first one is obviously empowering consumers in the green transition. There's also empowering consumers in the digital transition, special support to vulnerable consumers. And then there are international aspects and governance aspects. So this is our framework. We consider consumers as partners, powerful partners in the implementation of this agenda. And we also use the Consumer Policy Advisory Group, which is a new group of stakeholders, which is actually, there's a call for application, which is currently open for candidate organizations and experts. Maybe I will send Think Young the link to apply to that, because this is where we try to ensure that we have all the stakeholders on board. Of course, National Consumer Organization, ECC, is represented as an ad hoc member for the EU network. We're looking forward to have an organization representing young people, of course. And this is where we take those decisions. There are many specific actions in relation to the implementation of this new consumer agenda, about 20 precise concrete actions. I will not go into details, but indeed we have touched upon a number of them. The repairability of products, fighting premature obsolescence are 2 examples, for instance, as to how we want to empower consumers to take an active role in the green transition.
Thank you very much, Anne, for your answer. So I would like to move on now to our audience questions. I'm sure you guys have some absolutely lovely questions for our experts. So let's have the first question. So we have a question here from Nadia. So curious about the sustainability education in public schools. So what does this landscape look like going into the next school year in various European countries? So this is quite a broad topic, but I would actually like to pose this question to Erasmus, if you don't mind answering.
Sorry, I think I had.
I think Erasmus has some. Yes, I'll ask you. Don't worry, we'll move on to someone else, but we will ask you another question later on. So don't worry. I'd like to pose this question to Karen, if you're happy to have to answer.
Well, there is so many interesting information that could be added to education in public schools. And this should definitely be one of them. I completely agree. I don't know how this is tackled at EU level or national level, but I completely agree that this should be part of the education.
Thank you very much. So we'll have the next question from the audience. We might be having some technical issues today, but no worries. Oh, we have a question here from Marta. Thank you, Marta, for your question. So what actions should governments and policymakers undertake in order to encourage this transition towards a more sustainable economy? So I would again pose this question to Erasmus, but there's a bit of technical issues here, so no worries. I will actually, Anne, if you would like to give us your answers to this question, that'd be amazing. Thank you.
Sure. So as mentioned before, we basically act on different levels. The first one is the product, sustainability of the product element. So this is something which is actually fairly established now, well before the European Green Deal became a priority, is the consideration of the full life cycle of a product from production to disposal, including waste. So this is actually one of the specificities of the European way of tracking the sustainability of products, this full life cycle assessment. You have the eco-design directives ensuring that a product can be repairable, can be reused, can be recycled. That's another strong element. So there's everything around the sustainability of products. And here Rasmus mentioned the proposal currently, which will come out quite soon, for sustainable products initiative. So which will go another steps further. The other element is to fight the green claims, unfunded green claims. So ensuring that when consumers get an information that a product is sustainable, that this information is actually in line with reality. It's not just a fad. So that's another strong element we are involved on. The other element is actually a little bit linked to the previous question, sustainability, sustainable consumption. How do we include this in the education curriculum? So this is also something we're looking at here. National consumer organizations are very much our partners. They know best their market, they know best their consumers. And we are indeed exploring the possibility to add some, to add in the school curriculums elements of, well, of course, consumer rights, to make consumers aware of their rights, and to encourage sustainable consumption right from the beginning.
Thank you very much, Anne. I see we're still having a bit of technical issues here, but no worries. I think even as we become more technically and logical advanced, we'll still have issues with simple broadcasts, but no worries, because it's a normal thing. We're all used to Zoom and webinars at the moment. So we'll have our next question. And we have a question here from Zlatomir, who is saying, as a customer who was previously unaware of some of the issues discussed today, what is the best way of going forward to ensure my personal choices make a change? So actually, I want to pose this question to Felipe. If you are right, go ahead. Felipe?
So yeah, the question is on how to get, let's say, reliable information. Well, I think first is to be focused on since you wake up until you get asleep, what interaction you have with consumption. So when you wake up in the morning, you take a shower. Well, you need some energy to heat the water. How is the energy produced? You eat your breakfast. So where does the cereals come from? Then you take the bicycle or the tram or the car to go to your job. You know, and then make a link to the society problems we are having, like climate change, and yeah, all those kind of issue. I think we are lucky nowadays to have to be able to have good documentaries made by independent people who are able to also open your mind. I mean, everyone can have access to very crazy good information. So well, I can send you some documentaries, but I think there's a lot of information on internet. Just it's important to see who are the people who make these documentaries, how this information is funded. So I think it's a personal path, and maybe there's no one way to find out what's the best. But yeah, that's a bit my answer.
Couldn't agree more. I think it's definitely given us something to think about as well. I just want to quickly see, Rasmus, can you see if we can hear you there?
Yes, I have no problems any longer. So if you can hear me, everything is fine.
Brilliant.
Well, I wanted to add something to the question before, actually, because I think besides of the different proposals we already talked about, I think it's also, and especially the supply chain issue, I think this is really something where we will have a new dynamic to ensure that the supply chains are more sustainable, and that companies also will face a higher responsibility than they are doing now. We are having the proposal from the European Commission, but we are also seeing some developments in some of the member states, like for example in Germany, with a with a much better proposal on the European side than on the German side. But still, I wanted to say that this is an important topic where I think if you're interested in those developments, you will find a lot of informations in the internet about it. And the other thing, maybe also a bit related to that, is that I think we need to rediscuss the way we are doing trade agreements and trade policy. And this is quite controversial, let's put it like that, because we still can see a lot also of big trade agreements not facing some of the sustainability questions we had discussed in the past hour. But if we're taking things serious and if we want to have real change, then we need to look on the way we are trading with other parts of the world. I mean, one of the biggest discussions is the trade agreement with the Mercosur agreement with the Mercosur countries, basically, especially Brazil, where we can see a lot of problems related to the Amazon forest. But there are more issues like that in all of the trade agreements. We are also discussing the China Invest agreement right now. There are some other problems there. And of course there also had been some changes this week, but it's still in the debate. And this is really something where I would like to say, if you're interested in following this also from a political perspective, maybe an NGO or I don't know, in a different way, then look on the trade debates we are facing also in the European Parliament. This is really important.
Thank you very much, Rasmus, and it's great to even see a screenshot of you there. So thank you very much for that. And thank you so much for our audience for our questions. They're absolutely amazing, and I hope our experts enjoyed answering them as well. So just to finalize, I want to ask our speakers, I'm going to put them on the spot, hopefully you don't mind. I want to give you at least 30 seconds to a minute to answer the following question. So tell me what you think the future of ethical consumerism will look like. So I'm going to start first with Anne.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to, I think I agree a lot with Felipe. Ethical consumption is a lot about asking yourself the question, do I need this? Why do I need it for? Can I change the way I move? So this type of personal questions. The other element is indeed it should be much easier than it is today to actually buy sustainably, easily, and for a reasonable price. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what I would say.
Thank you very much. I'm going to move on to Karen. Karen.
I was thinking of the chicken and the egg principle. We say that in Dutch, between the businesses and the consumers, because they look at each other all the time. And I think business should not always look at the consumers and wait until they are changing their behavior and request for more sustainable products. Producers should just make sustainable products, sustainable production processes, and provide clear, transparent, and comparable information about it. And on the other hand, as ECCNet, I'm also wondering what kind of questions we might receive from consumers in the future about this topic, and how and where we can help on this.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Felipe.
So I totally agree with what has been said. So just to have a little add-on, I think it's important to change the way we think about mutualizing and sharing objects that we consume. For example, a car sharing, that's a typical example. Like, for example, I'm wondering if the future is changing from fuel car to a Tesla. I'm not sure if there's a solution that each one has its own electrical car, which demands such a big amount of resources, etc. So I think it's also important to change the way we think about the objects that we need.
Thank you. And last but not least, Rasmus.
First of all, I would like to say that I'm quite optimistic, and I think there will be a lot of changes, and I think that those questions will be at the core of political activities in Brussels, but also in the member states. And I think also when you're looking on the climate debate we are facing in many of the countries, when you're seeing also how, for example, decisions from constitutional courts related to sustainability are going right now, then we can see a lot of changes. And this means that it's good to be at the forefront of those discussions, and you are. And this is really important. What I think is key to get it implemented, not just for few, but for a majority of citizens, is to have the social division and in mind, and to take that into account related to proposals. We need to address also people maybe in a different reality when it comes to income and when it comes to different backgrounds. So this is really something I think is important. So this means that, for example, when we are dealing with the different with the price, for example, right, of the product, so that we can see if we are making unsustainable products more expensive, like I think we need to do, then we need to give a social balance in a way also to people, so that they are having the possibility also to consume not just like they want, but also more sustainable. And this is really something where I think we need to discuss that more, and we need to have that much more in mind, especially at European level, where we are not really discussing it in this way. And this is really key to ensure that we are ending up with a system that works for all and not just for some few people. But I'm optimistic that we are going in the right direction, and I want to say thank you also to the other panelists. I think this was really an interesting discussion, and I would like to continue.
Thank you very much, and hopefully we can continue this conversation outside the webinar as well. So thank you to all of our speakers for joining us today. And just before we go, I want to mention something very exciting. So this year we're working on our current Thinkathon project, and as a part of this, we have this lovely webinar series, but we're also producing some lovely research papers as well. So over the next few weeks, please keep an eye on our social media, and we'll be producing those. So the next one will be up on ethical consumerism. So don't forget to check that out. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or whatever social media platform you can find us on, and even on TikTok. So don't forget to check us out on there as well. So thank you very much to all of our speakers. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you today, and it's been thank you to our audience for your amazing questions as well. So hopefully we'll see you all very soon, and let's continue this discussion outside. And to all my fellow Gen Z, millennials, baby boomers, to everyone out there, continue to help fight for a better environment and a healthier future. And let's keep going. So thank you very much. All the best.